Hey guys, how's it going? Caleb here. Hope you're doing well. God bless. Love you. Gonna be talking about, reacting to America compared. Why other countries treat their people so much better. So, oh no, I got some liquid on my keyboard. Um, so some America bashing. I'm sure it'll go real well. No, I'm um, I'm all for criticism. I just think it's best when people try to phrase it um, as best as they can. This is not too. This is not a very. It's not stated in a very attacking manner, but it sounds like there might be an attack coming. So let's get ready and let's watch.
This episode and others like it are made possible by the generous support of my patrons on Patreon. If you'd like to help me make more content like this, consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/secondthought.
All right.
I'm going to say something that will probably offend many of my viewers. Let me preface this by saying that I, as an American, include myself in the following statement. Americans are quite possibly the most willfully ignorant people on the face of the planet. We have access to the sum total of all human knowledge, yet our understanding of the world rarely extends beyond our own country.
We have access to the is ignorant. He's saying in terms of like geopolitics or uh, pop culture outside of America, and I mean, because they're pretty defined. I'll listen to more, but if he's, it sounds like he's saying we don't know about stuff outside America, but you could be way more knowledgeable, but just have knowledge more so about your own country, or uh, something that doesn't have to do with country specific ish things.
And even then, the majority of Americans believe in a vision of the country that does not actually exist. It's not that we're stupid, we just tend to blindly accept that the US is the greatest place on earth, and therefore don't see any reason to educate ourselves about the reality.
I think people say this a lot, but or some people say this a lot, but some people hate America. A lot of Americans, I mean, especially now, it's very um, a la mode to hate America. So, um, I would disagree with that. I think people get this in their head because they see it like we very often win a lot at the Olympics, and you know, we obviously win at the championships, which are held in America, um, usually for basketball, American football, and like those kind of things. But um, and there's a stereotype of Americans kind of being obnoxious and saying we're the best and stuff. But I think that honestly died mostly, not entirely, but mostly started dying like 30 years ago, I'd say. Um, Slowly, but certainly now it's just far, far less than it used to be. I want to make sure I responded to everything that you said there.
Actually exist. It's not that we're stupid, we just tend to blindly accept that the US is the greatest place on earth, and therefore don't see any reason to educate ourselves about the realities of the rest of the world.
Yeah, I mean, no, I pretty much responded to it. There's some people like that, but I think very few, certainly far less than there used to be. And you know, these things can kind of change in their subjective, change over a long period of time, and they're subjective. And so, I think at one point America was certainly the best place to be, and the best place in the world. Um, and for some people, like it still is. Some people, they for what you know, there's certain things that they love about America, and that other countries can't fill. Um, and so it will be the best. You know, it's subjective. Some countries are going to be worse, and some will be better for certain people. So.
world. In this episode, we're going to pull back the curtain on how America actually compares to other countries, and consider why the richest country on earth fails to treat its people with dignity and fairness. I'm going to provide a list of important topics, then for each item we'll compare the American experience with that of citizens from other nations. Hopefully by providing a side-by-side comparison, you'll be able to see the stark contrast between how most Americans see their country and how it really stacks up against the competition. To give you an idea of just how skewed the American perception of our country really is, let's start with a pretty shocking example. Compensation for what are considered low-skilled jobs. We'll take the quintessential American company, McDonald's. McDonald's is the world's largest restaurant chain by revenue. It operates in over 100 countries and serves over 69 million customers every day. As of 2018, McDonald's was the second largest private employer, with 1.7 million employees, behind Walmart's 2.3 million. How many times have you heard someone refer to McDonald's jobs or workers in a derogatory manner? For some reason, people who work at McDonald's are seen as inferior or lazy or have any number of other unfair and unkind assessments leveled at them. This probably stems.
I disagree with that completely. Not completely. Inferior, I'd say yeah. It's kind of looked at it in the same vein as like a janitor. Janitor might be even less, but I wouldn't call people who work at McDonald's lazy. And I don't think of them as inferior. I'm just saying that's the public perception.
Or lazy or have any number of other unfair and unkind assessments leveled at them.
I disagree with that. I think people. Not gonna pick that up. I'm gonna backpedal on that because I thought about it a little more. I do think people who work at McDonald's are generally considered not very intelligent, and I don't think that's fair. But that could be applied from society's standpoint. At the same time, I think many people are willing to wait and before judgment, but that's just kind of like a small stereotype associated could be.
Inferior or lazy or have any number of other unfair and unkind assessments leveled at them. This probably stems from the old notion of flipping burgers being a job anyone can perform. But the animosity towards low-wage workers has grown significantly in the past few decades. And in America, McDonald's workers...
I don't know if that's true. I've only been alive not more than 3 decades, so I don't know how it was before.
Really do suffer a low wage. As of 2020, the average crew member at McDonald's makes $9 per hour. The average McDonald's cashier makes $8 per hour. The federal minimum wage in the United States is $7.25, a rate which has not been raised in over a decade, and which should not be considered a reasonable wage for any position, considering the fact that a full-time minimum wage worker cannot afford to rent a 2-bedroom apartment.
Okay, I have a huge... Oh my goodness, I've seen this so many times, and they show a map of how much it would cost for a 2-bedroom apartment. Okay, let's start from the beginning. The minimum wage is meant to not exploit, basically children who join the workforce or people who are like just starting out. It's not meant to be something that you build your career on. And he even mentioned before that McDonald's pays higher than the minimum wage. And this 2-bedroom apartment in the city, most people don't need. Most people are fine. I lived in a studio for many years. I'm perfectly happy in a studio, and most people do not need a 2-bedroom apartment. If you have a 2-bedroom apartment, if you need 2 bedrooms, if you have a family, you probably should have tried to figure for that, calculate how much you need before you start a family. Apart from very rare instances. Most people can deal with that. I don't want to have children, but if I did, I would make sure that I had way more money than I needed to in order to take care of them, and make sure that I knew how much money I will make, can reasonably expect. Having said that, I do think people should be able to. I do think it would be good for people to make more money. Certainly, I think and raising the minimum minimum wage may be the way to do so. Sometimes I think of through certain policies or issues, and then I forget the conclusion that I arrived to. But um, I think this 2 bedroom apartment thing with a minimum wage is like, it's just ludicrous. I've never had a 2 bedroom apartment, so, and I make like decent money.
Anywhere in the United States and can't afford a one-bedroom apartment in over 95% of U.S. counties.
Okay, now we said the 1%. One bedroom apartment. Okay, and 95.
A two-bedroom apartment anywhere in the United States and can't afford a one-bedroom apartment in over 95% of U.S. counties.
I don't think that's true. I've seen 1 bedroom apartments that were affordable. So I don't know what kind of metric that is, but let's see. To calculate times 40 times 4, so $1,000. All right, so you get some money taken out for tax. You got to pay for food. It's at least $200. If you can live very cheaply on food and stuff. But let's say $200. So that would be 800 left over. If all you're paying is food and apartment, 800 is plenty to get. Well, I wouldn't say plenty. You could get one in most places that I know. It would be really hard and tight, but I think it's doable. I would question those. Again, this would not be like a fantastic life, and I think you would be better off going for a studio, which you might get, a couple $100 less, but I think you could get a $500-$600 studio, possibly one bedroom in most places in America. I would have to do a deep search on that. I'm not going to do that. But I think you could find a place to live, probably like a studio or one apartment for. I mean, I just saw what was it, a studio or a 1 bedroom, and it was 400 per month. So that's very low, but it's possible. But going with the overall kind of what he's trying to say, there's always this back and forth between, how much you should support, how much you should like give to the lowest class of people, and how much you should withhold so that they try to strive to better themselves. I think the best thing, in my opinion, and I'll finish the rest of the video. This might be a really long video. In my opinion, the best thing is to first help people's mental health, which I've seen them do in Norway. They put a ton of emphasis and money into emphasis on mental health and money into it. And if you look at, they're one of the wealthiest countries per capita. Even if you remove the oil income that they get, still extremely wealthy. And I think it's in large part due to the mental health focus. And because a lot of people, they can do better, but they won't because they're depressed, or they just can't figure out some certain problems in their life. They have emotional issues that they've never dealt with internally, and they can't get over. They could use to either talk to somebody or some medication or both. And if they won't ever try to do something better in their life, and it's much better than just giving them some more money, is to give them joy and fulfillment and happiness in their life. Peace, love, harmony, all these very good things that you can get when you're feeling better, when your mind is working correctly. but certainly people who are unable to, who have such a low IQ that they can't do anything more, I think these people should be uh, extremely supported in society in every possible way.
Now, the all too common response to data like this is something like, well, yeah, it's not a hard job. You should just find a better one. Here's a simple question. Should any job, regardless of technical skill required, pay workers so little that they cannot afford to rent even the smallest place to live? Not to mention other necessities like utilities, food, and medicine. Absolutely not. That is inhumane and cruel.
So there's some, I think if you look at like Australia, they have a minimum wage for different age levels. So as you go up, and I think once you pass like 20 something, you'll hit the highest minimum wage. But like, so the kids who live at home are not getting as much a wage. They if they have somewhere to live, they don't need to pay rent. It's just money coming in, and they usually are very low in skill. It's more of a risk for employers. They're not as steady and stable, and they can cause there's more likely to cause problems if they don't have anything to lose. Um, uh, and also, not emotionally mature and things like this. So that's what the minimum wage is mostly meant for, to just not exploit these beginning workers so that they're not getting anything. It's not meant to stay on. Again, as I said, that McDonald's even pays their many of their employees higher than that, and Walmart, say for example, I think their minimum is like $10 an hour or 12 or something. A lot of companies have a much higher company minimum than the minimum wage. I think Amazon is like 15. So uh, again, I'm not saying it shouldn't be higher, but there's a lot of other things to take into account, and I think certainly mental health is by far the greatest of those.
Especially coming from the second largest employer in the richest country on the planet. Other notable objectives.
He keeps saying richest country, but that's just in terms of the money overall. Um, that's not per capita. I mean, there's many countries that are much wealthier than America per capita. I could list a ton: Switzerland, Norway, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Qatar, um, uh, Ireland. There's a lot. I think I just said six off the top of my head. So um, uh, America has a ton of wealth, but it also has a huge amount of people. So it's, um, that's the per capita divided by the population.
Objections include McDonald's has to make a profit. If they pay their workers more, they might go out of business. First of all, if you can't pay your workers a fair wage, your company should not be in business. End of story. But again, McDonald's is not struggling to make ends meet. In 2019, McDonald's raked in $21 billion in revenue. But no matter how obvious the exploitation of low wage
revenue is far different from um, profit. Profit is what you're left over with. So if they had many billions in profit, um, that's a different story entirely. And some companies do give back. I know that Delta Airlines gave a lot back to their workers right before the coronavirus pandemic. Um, so so let me say that hurt them a lot because they actually could have held on to that to keep them from going under. I think they got money from the government, so that stopped them from going under. But that happens a lot. There's profit sharing. A friend of mine works at a place where actually a few of mine where they give money back to the employees based on how the company does at the year. Um, if you pick out a bad company or one of the worst companies in America, and you kind of base it on you say this is America, I think that's also very unfair and not. It's just not a good comparison. It's not true comparison.
wage workers, Americans are hell-bent on praising the very companies doing the exploiting. Take this article on Reader's Digest, for example.
Again, with McDonald's, he just keeps bringing on McDonald's. It's one company.
It's titled, "This is what McDonald's workers really get paid." You see that and think, oh, nice, finally some news showing how poorly these workers are compensated. Then you scroll down and nope, they're actually praising McDonald's, saying things like, the food chain is also great for paying their workers fairly, and McDonald's is one of the highest paying fast food chains in the United States. This level of sick...
I don't know about that. Maybe when compared to like sort of mom and pop type operations, because I think they often pay minimum wage if they can.
Occupancy is insane. If $8 or $9 an hour is some of the highest pay in the industry, that doesn't indicate that McDonald's is paying fairly. It indicates that a massive chunk of the population is being paid poverty wages. This is where taking an international perspective is so critical. If all you see is feel-good stories about how well McDonald's workers are paid, you'll never know how badly American workers are actually being treated. Let's take the same company, the same position, but in a different country. Here's a McDonald's in Denmark. The average McDonald's worker in Denmark, for doing the same low-skill job, makes $22 per hour. Well, hold on, you hear Reader's Digest scream from across the Atlantic. McDonald's workers in America get paid vacation days after just a year of work. Wow, enticing. In Denmark, when you're hired at McDonald's, not only are you making nearly 3 times what you would make in an American Mickey D's, you also instantly have access to a full year of paid family leave and a pension.
So, the like McDonald's in certain areas of America can make, if my understanding is correct, the same or higher. In certain areas, the cost of living is extremely low, and so comparing America to like Denmark, which is a pretty small country, which is a very wealthy country and has a high cost of living, is again, I don't think it's fair if you were, it's many McDonald's are located in very poor areas in America, and they might be located in poor areas of Denmark. Also, I'm not sure, but even if they are, I would guess that the poorest areas of America as a whole are far, far poorer and have a much lower cost of living than the poorest areas of Denmark. Again, I would have to look that up. I'm not going to take the time to look that up. Take a while, but these comparisons, I'm not saying that this guy doesn't have a point at all. I think there is a point to, we always want to help people get that are poor be not poor, of course. But I think you want to be fair too, and I think these are not great comparisons in my opinion.
No slaving away for a year to prove your value to the company. You're hired and you're treated fairly.
I was told by a friend that like a manager at McDonald's, which is not, again, I think he was saying that the starting wage or something, or like a crew member, I'd have to go back and check, but was like 80,000 in California, around where he lives. So that's more than the average American makes. That's huge. The ones in my area only make about 30,000. But the cost of living in California is like astronomically higher than my area.
Simple as that. McDonald's can afford to compensate all their workers like this, but they won't, because US laws allow them to exploit American work.
I would want to see like the cost of like a hamburger in Denver from McDonald's in Denmark compared to like McDonald's in like Detroit or something.
Workers to the point where they're basically slaves, earning the bare minimum to survive, paying all of their income and often going into debt just to pay rent, and having no way to escape this vicious cycle because they're working such long hours. This is the case across all of America's low-wage jobs, of which there are many. The plight of the low-wage worker is incredibly dire, and all you have to do to understand that is look at how those same workers are treated in other wealthy countries. Let's move on to another topic. Work-life balance. Fair wages are definitely part of this equation. If you're paid fairly, you don't need to work a second job, which will free up your time to be spent elsewhere. But we're going to focus on other metrics, specifically the length of the work week, vacation time, and parental leave. Let's start with the US. Most Americans would say that 40 hours per week is full time. That seems to be the general consensus. But, in keeping with the country's exploitative labor practices, the hilariously named Fair Labor Standards Act does not actually define what qualifies as full time. That's left up to the employer. Okay, why does this matter? Well, think of your past part-time jobs. Did you get any benefits? Healthcare, 401k? Probably not. Most benefits, when they're offered at all, are reserved for full-time employees. Companies don't want to provide benefits because they affect their bottom line. America is all about cutting costs and providing.
That's not true. That's America's. He, uh, that I could refute that for so long, but I know I have plenty of friends who are with wonderful jobs. They make a solid income, and they're very happy, and they get tons of perks from their job from the employer that the employer doesn't need to give them. And if you look at like Glassdoor, there's tons of companies that are highly rated, and the employees love the company and love working there. So I mean, it's not all about. I mean, he's really kind of speaking very broad generalizations, and I wouldn't even agree with the generalization. I think there's definitely a lot of places that um, are all about cutting corners, but I've only worked for one place that was like cutting costs. One place that was like horrible about it,
Workers
and I've worked at a lot of
with
places.
fair compensation is a cost. So, imagine you apply for a full-time job at Best Buy. You're offered the job, but they tell you they only have part-time positions, but they can give you almost full-time. They make it sound like they're doing you a favor, offering you more hours than normal part-time. But this is just another example of employers exploiting their workers. If you work 37 hours per week, you're essentially a full-time employee, but they don't have to provide you any sort of benefits. No healthcare, no vacation, nothing. This is a common practice. Companies will hire people but keep them just below the threshold for full time to avoid providing fair compensation. I've seen it happen. I used to work at Best Buy and they would do it all the time. And that's just the companies who are still trying to appear generous. Others will simply not offer benefits at all, or set their full-time positions at 50 or 60 hours per week. Sales.
That's true, but I'd have to look this up, and again, it would take a while. But I'm pretty sure the legislation says that it is 40 hours and above is considered full time, or they don't even state full time. They just say a worker who works 40 hours or more has to get this. Because I was recently researching this, and I'm fairly certain that this is not correct about this. Because then every employer would just say, "Oh no, you're not full time. It's full time is 100 hours a week." Or
Positions are notorious for this. They'll often say, well, we expect you to work 40 hours, but all the top sellers are working 60 to 70 hours per week. This is coercion. They're trying to pressure you into working more hours to benefit them, and the compensation is never what they claim it will be. By allowing employers to define full-time work, American workers are held captive by corporations, forced to either work absurd hours to qualify for full-time benefits, or find a second job to help cover the cost of things like health insurance. Both of these options lead to a terrible work-life balance, and as real wages have decreased and benefits have been offered less and less over the years, huge numbers of American workers have developed an unhealthy work-life balance. For example, in 1960, when workers had real bargaining power, only 20% of American women worked. Today, 70% of children live in households where both parents are working full-time. Where does all this lead? As of 2020, over 85% of American men and
so, so to keep running this up, I looked it up on my phone. Um, employees are entitled to time and a half overtime pay when working over 40 hours a week. So there's at least that. Um, the Bureau of State Labor and Statistics says that full time is over 35 hours a week. Um, yeah, so those are two things that state that there's at least time and a half. That's pretty good. Um, No, let me see this. Just looking up. Alright, this is gonna take too long. Anyway, I know that with like large employers, under the what was it, Obamacare mandate, have to pay for insurance for full time, and I believe that was 40 hours a week.
And 66% of women work more than 40 hours per week. We work 137 more hours per year than Japanese workers.
Oh, I disagree. I don't think that's true.
260 more than the British, and 499 more hours per year than the French. Why do other countries have such a better balance? Because many of them have laws that cap the length of the full-time work week. Companies are required to pay their workers fairly and allow enough time off for employees to maintain a healthy work-life balance. That's not the case in the US. Vacation time is a similar story. Whereas many other countries mandate that employers provide paid vacation and sick days, the US does not. In every industrialized nation, workers get more paid vacation days and holidays than in the US. Here's a depressing graph to illustrate just how poorly we treat our workers. France 31, Spain 34,
I think he's talking about government mandated, and a lot of these things that he's mentioning is government mandate stuff, and I don't think it's really fair to say America compared to other countries. I would say American government policies in this specific thing that he's talking about, yeah, um, definitely better for these employees in other countries. But most people get at least 2 weeks off in America if you're working in a professional setting. Um, I have heard horror stories of that not being the case, but this is just really, in my opinion, a not fair comparison because some companies give very generous, could be more than a month. Not super common, but it's possible. Um, yeah, he's talking mostly in terms of government uh, mandated issues. It could go back to the minimum wage on this. Also, most companies are not paying minimum wage, and most of them have significant. Okay, so 7.25 was uh, the federal minimum wage. Amazon's is more than double that at 15. So
Austria 38, America 0. 0 paid vacation days, 0 paid holidays. And remember, these are the mandated figures. Every Austrian worker gets a minimum of 38 paid days off per year. Even in the worst possible employment situation, they still get 38
nice
paid
building.
days off. In the US, many workers are lucky to get Christmas or Thanksgiving off at all. And the odds that it's a paid holiday? Next to 0.
That's very very different. Like most places have off for Christmas now. There was a big push for that a few years ago. People getting upset, and many companies changed their policy on that. Forget what he said just after that.
Christmas or Thanksgiving off at all. And the odds that it's a paid holiday? Next to 0.
Paid holiday? Oh. Yeah, that's pretty rare.
Let's move on to our final comparison. Paid parental leave. Many Americans aren't even aware this is a thing, so let me explain. When an employee of a company has
Most Americans aren't even aware. That's wrong. Most people would know what that is. He's really making Americans sound like complete morons.
As a child, sometimes they're offered parental leave, a period of time where they can stay home from work to bond with and take care of their new baby. This greatly benefits the employee, the child, and, in the long run, the company, because the employee will be happier, less stressed, and more loyal to the company. Of course, offering paid parental leave doesn't benefit corporations in the short term, and if there's one thing that encapsulates the American business philosophy, it's short-term gains over all else. So it won't surprise you to learn.
No. I think that that sort of mentality was the in vogue. I don't know if that's the right phrase. That was kind of how people thought a while ago, but it's changed drastically, in my opinion. Some companies are still like that, but most have a real long-term mindset and try to not have their employees in complete misery. Um, and many try to treat them very, very well, and some very, very well. Uh, they don't always succeed in that, and some people, most people are not really happy to work. Um, but this is quite extreme. He's saying like speaks in these broad generalizations and broad generalizations that I disagree with. I don't think they're true.
That the US is the only industrialized nation on the planet that does not mandate some amount of paid parental leave. This may be shocking to my American viewers because being able to get
A lot of government jobs have paid parental leave, especially like teachers. Um, so that's like halfway there because there's tons of government jobs. Um, and a lot of companies give parental leave and some paid parental leave. Um, so yeah, again, he's talking about the government mandates.
paid to spend time with your newborn child sounds like an impossible dream in our dystopian labor market. And
Okay, this now I'm done. Now I'm done. Now I'm done with this guy. Dystopian labor market is just so wildly off. It's not the greatest in the world, but uh, I've just gotten a bunch of job offers that were for decent jobs. So I mean, if it was that dystopian, I would be just scrapping for crumbs.
honestly, it probably is impossible in our current America. We're so invested in self destructive capitalism that even suggesting the possibility of paid parental leave would put US politicians out of a job. That's not the case
No, I'm plenty of politicians talk about
in the
that.
rest of the industrialized world. In fact, every other OECD nation, and even in many third world countries, new parents are guaranteed at least several weeks of leave. Let's take a look at a few of them. Ethiopia, a country with an annual gross national income of under $900 per person, offers 90 days of leave with 100% pay. Madagascar, 14 weeks at 100%. Afghanistan, 90 days. Denmark, 52 weeks. Norway, 56 weeks. France, 16 weeks at 100% pay for your first child.
Wow, 52 weeks, so you could just have a kid once every year, and you never have to work, and the company has to keep giving you full wage? I don't think that's the case. If that is, that would be wild. Some people do have big families. It's pretty rare, but it's oh man, that could be a few years at least if you just keep having kids. Oh wow,
Child, up to 26 weeks for your third, on top of
a year,
104 unpaid weeks. Lithuania,
2 years. So if you have 5 children in your family, you every 2 years you have a child, and you get paid full. The company doesn't have to pay you for 10 years. I don't know about that. That sounds not correct.
52 weeks at 100%, plus an additional 52 weeks at 80%. Again, the United States does not
104,
mandate a single day of paid parental
two
leave, even for
years.
the mother, and the father is never considered. This means that workers in America have to choose to either pay the exorbitant cost of childcare or have one parent quit their job in order to take care of the child. These are both bad options, which often lead to economic precarity. But that doesn't matter to the companies employing American workers. Profit is the only thing that matters. Hope.
No, people want to be happy and enjoy their life, and even managers want to live in like a decent environment. People are much more focused on having a good work life balance and workspace and things like this. Wow, if this video came out like 15 years ago, I would say yeah, this is maybe on point, but I don't know when this. I'll have to check when this video came out.
Seeing these labor practices.
YouTube hasn't even been around that long, so Yeah.
Is compared like this has
Or maybe it just started then.
made it clear that not only is the U.S. not living up to its claim to being the greatest nation on earth, but also that
Oh my gosh. Well, that's so subjective. That's just you're basing it off of these things that you said. What if there was no crime at all and everybody was happy every day, all day? Then it would. Then maybe that would. I'm not saying those are true, but you're just he's just basing it off these things, these few things that he said.
it consistently ranks poorly and often dead last in terms of labor metrics. Why is it that the wealthiest, most powerful nation on earth can't pay their workers a fair wage, or
Again,
provide health care, vacation time,
not wealthiest per capita, not even close, really.
or paid parental leave? You should realize by now that it's not that they can't, it's that they won't. Everything in America is beholden to the almighty dollar. Profit is the only motivator. If an action
No, not the only motivator. The huge motivator, not the only.
does not produce a greater profit, it will not be considered. Over the last few decades,
No, not true. Not true. As I said before, companies give big bonuses to that they don't have to give to sometimes they give to certain their employees, and they do a bunch of other things that it's not clearly not going to get them anything back. It's just not true.
Americans have watched as our livelihoods, our quality,
They give to a bunch of companies give to, well, they can get tax write-offs for. I'm pretty sure they can get tax write-offs for like charity, but a lot of them do give to charity.
of life, and our dignity have all been stripped away by those who already make obscene amounts of money. Those in power say we're all in this together, but that couldn't be further from the truth. The ultra-wealthy and the world's largest corporations rely on Americans remaining ignorant. They rely on us accepting the lie that America is the greatest nation on earth, that it couldn't possibly get any better. All you have to do to shatter that lie is to take a look around the world. Other nations take care of their citizens. Even impoverished nations, or nations that we've bombed into oblivion, take better care of their people than the U.S. does.
I'm gonna give a harsh no to that. It's clearly better living in any of the African countries, or in India, or some South America. It's clearly better living on the minimum wage here, in certain areas at least. If you're gonna try to live in Manhattan on the minimum wage, no, it's not gonna work. Just don't. You can't do it. It's not possible. You'd have to live on the street. But if you're gonna live on the minimum wage in America, in rural Nebraska or something, you'll be much better than in India or Africa or South America or something. It's ridiculous.
American workers need to relearn the language of class struggle and work together to break the wheel of the capitalist machine. If we want to claim that the United States is the greatest place on earth, we need to make it that way.
Okay.
I mentioned at the beginning of this video that this kind of content is supported by my patrons on Patreon. This type of video, while very important, is something that sponsors won't touch.
Okay. Yeah, donate if you want. I wouldn't give this guy any money to make any more bad content, in my opinion. I mean, God bless him. I want to help people as much as the next person, probably more. But I don't think the right thing to do is giving these like sort of half truths and things that are just like, or just straight out false. This is low quality content, and like I said, in my opinion, focus on mental health. Try to get people free mental health, free counseling, free you know prescription medication that can't kill them or something, or just to help people, not addictive type things, and after that, once we have a really good thing set up that way, system, then find ways to help people who still cannot get any better, who are just at the bottom rungs of society. Maybe they just have too low of an IQ. Give these people as much as we can in terms of support and every way, mostly financially, and in terms of like advice and all these things. To me, that'll do much more. And I do think I do think the having the mandated time off is something I'll agree with. That is would definitely be good. I think paid time off at least 2 weeks for everybody who's working. Um, um, I think there's a number of ways to do that, but I won't get into it too much. Anyway, if you like this, please like, comment, and subscribe. That was way longer than I thought it would be. I don't know how long this video is going to be, but I was actually trying to speed through part of it to not waste people's time. And sorry for pausing, for looking at stuff, but thank you. Love you. God bless. Have a good one. And take care. Thanks.